Hello, everyone. Welcome to Circle of Healing Connection. This is Madhu.
This is Angela.
Hey,
Today,
this is Mike.
actually, we're having our second interview with Mike, who is the guide. And we have learned so many great insights from Mike from our first interview with him. So excited to hear more from Mike. Welcome, Mike.
Well, happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Angela and Madhu. It's always a pleasure, and I love what you are both doing with Circle of Healing Connection, and I'm honored to be able to support in all the ways that you need. So thank you.
So, Mike, talk to us today. We would like to focus our segment, of course, on men. And as a man, we want to focus, like, we want to get your insight. So, talk to us, like, do men have challenges when it comes to emotion? And where would you say that they are coming from, dealing and all that stuff?
The first funny thing is the first thing when you said, "Do men have challenges to deal with emotion or about emotions?" The first thing that came up in me is, "Don't tell me about my challenges." And this is honestly, it's the world as a man. The world teaches me and teaches men that we have to have it all figured out.
Mm.
And what's the man that everybody looks up to? It's the man that has the answers. It's the man that has the money. It's the man that knows what's going on and has that air of having figured it out. And so how can I have any problems if I'm supposed to have it figured out? And there's like an instant resistance within me that says, don't tell me I have a problem. I don't have a problem. The problem is with you or somebody else or that thing or that situation or that boss or whatever it might be. I am doing what I can do. Stop challenging me on what I'm able to do. This is, again, I'm just being honest about what's coming up in terms of the talk track in my mind when you ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the interesting part is, it's like, I'm sure if you're a man, you're probably like, yeah, absolutely. Right. And if you're a woman listening to this, you're like, well, how am I supposed to talk to my man if I just want to talk about what's going on for him? And he's going to be like, well, no, nothing's going on. I'm okay. Right. And I think this is probably the challenge that we've all had if you're a woman or a man sitting on either side of that conversation. And so to say or to ask whether or not, what challenges men have around emotion is an instant just conversation stopper. Right. But I do understand what you're asking about. And the interesting part of it is like the reason that we're like that as men, people might just say men just don't like talking about their emotions. And that's a bunch of actually, and I'll be polite and yet straightforward. It's a bunch of BS. Men, just like women, are designed to have emotions. We have emotions. It's just the emotions that we are allowed to show is anger, rage, frustration, hate, the negative stuff, because it's powerful. Well, we've been taught that that's what's powerful. And this is the masculine energy of in your face, whatever that needs to be. Right. And so all we're doing as men is we're doing our best to show you that we're doing what we know our role to be. We're just doing our best to provide, to give, to bring home what you need, to do whatever you need to do with it, because this is how we've been taught. But the challenge that we've all run into, and the reason why it's so much more, I'll say difficult, even though I don't want to say difficult, we were taught from the moment we were crying, and around the age of 4 or 5 years old, don't cry. Men don't cry, man up. And our entire lives, we were taught to show you how much of a man we are. Mm. So how can you come again? And this is just me saying the talk track right now, right? Because it's just honest and raw. How can you come to me and tell me that I have a problem? Can't you see what I'm doing for you? Right? And if you're a man, you're probably like, yeah, exactly. If you're a woman going, oh my God, I deal with this every day. I can't deal with this anymore. Stop talking like this, Mike. Give me an answer. Right? So here's the thing. And this is right now where I want to develop some understanding. So when you're watching this, as you're watching this, please listen through, because there's some really important pieces of understanding that we need to take in to then be able to complete the question that you asked, complete the answer to the question that you asked. Okay. First of all, we need to understand why it is that men choose, or like it's so easy for us to show anger, but it's not so easy for us to show anything else, or we don't feel like we need to show anything else. What else is there to show? It's either we need to show anger because we're angry, or we're going to relax and you do what you need to do. Right? So here's the understanding. Now, and again, listen to all this all the way through. Even if you don't agree to some of the stuff, ask the questions. Ask me some questions as well. Feel free, because this is very important for us to get through. Right? For us, for any human being to have a full range of expressing emotion, is a difference between I'm angry constantly versus I can see what makes me angry and express underneath all of that what that is in a healthy way, where I can say, you know what, no, I'm just sad because you didn't like what I just did, and it means a lot to me if you were to like that. But the first thing that comes up is anger, but it doesn't come up right away because it builds up. So this is why. All right. At the age of 4 or 5, when we're taught not to cry, we then suppress our emotion. As a man, think of it, as a boy, just like a girl, there's emotion, there's crying. It's perfectly natural. And it's, as a human being, our subconscious mind, 90% of our brain volume, 1,000,000 times more powerful than our conscious mind, is an emotionally based mind. We start to shut down our emotions because we are not allowed to show emotion, because we're taught that men have to be silent, suck it up, man up, get it done. Between the age of when we're in our mom's womb to the age of 8, 7 or 8, is when our programming sets in. So at the age of 4 or 5, when we're taught not to cry, guess what that sets up for the rest of our lives? Suppressing of our emotion becomes an automatic, almost programmed thing that is going to take much more effort to overcome. Because it becomes this ingrained piece of how we identify ourselves. And because we've done that now, you're asking us to access something that our subconscious has been trained to actively suppress. It's not to say that we can't do it. We are very powerful minds. Both men and women, incredibly powerful minds. Human beings as a whole, we're incredibly powerful. We're so powerful, in fact, that once we program ourselves to do something, it becomes that much more difficult to unprogram it because the power of our mind prevents it. Now, because our subconscious mind is a part of us that automates everything, and this is where most of our processing happens. Mm-hmm. This is where a lot of our energy is being suppressed now, because if we suppress our emotion, we suppress our energy. And so what happens for us is, this is where you get men in relationships, because it doesn't happen in every relationship, but you have this set of relationships where men tend to just be kind of like participants, but not actively in charge or driving what wants to happen. They're just saying, what does my wife want? I just want peace. Because what's happening for us is we don't know this. We're spending our time, and if you're a man listening to this, consider what I'm saying. You don't have to believe it or agree with it, but consider what I'm saying and give it some thought, okay? And just take it in for now. Because our mind is based on emotion and feeling, and then thoughts come after, that's just how it works. We can talk more about that later. And we're suppressing actively our emotions. Subconsciously, we're suppressing our emotions. We're using up a lot of brain power we don't know we're using up. And by the end of the day, when you're asking us, after a full day of doing what we thought we need to get done, and then you're asking us or telling us that you are not happy after all the hard work we feel we've done, we're already mentally exhausted because we've spent the day suppressing our emotions. And half the time we're suppressing a lot of anger, because that's the only thing that's allowed for us to feel, because we've already done such a good job suppressing all the other stuff. Now, I work with men as well. And when I work with men, a lot of them actually realize that if they look back in their memories, there's very little joy. There's happiness, there's laughing, there's all of that, but there's very little depth of emotion and joy. A lot of anger, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. I'm not saying that this is just every man, and it's not like this doom and gloom, oh my God, horrible life that men live. No. And yet it's something that's just true. All right. So we're talking about men and emotions, right? So at the age of 5, we're taught to suppress emotion. Okay. Which becomes a pattern in the rest of our lives. Hold on here because it gets better. All right. So now we were living in our lives, both as boys and girls. We have access to love. Everybody loves us, adults, people older than us, strangers, our parents, everybody loves us. And when we get to a certain age, men are expected to be the sole successful, solitary successful person. And we're also kind of programmed that way as well. So, I mean, there is that nature aspect of men and women as well. I mean, so, but it doesn't help that we're already so separated and disconnected from our emotions through our upbringing. And then we have to be sole survivors. Now, here's the other piece of it. Because what we grow up with seeing, nowadays it's changed quite a lot, but there's still a lot of it happening. What we grow up seeing is that the heroes are the strong silent type. They're the ones that they stand on their own and everybody goes to them to be saved, but they don't have any weaknesses or very little. So all of a sudden we're trying to emulate that growing up and figuring out what it means to be a man. What's our role models? Mm-hmm. No emotion, don't show hurt, be tough. We're not taught that you can still show emotion, cry, be sad, and still hold ground and nobody can get to you. We're taught that once you show emotion, people get to you. And this is actually, we're going to talk a little bit more about this. Okay, so we crying when you're told you're not allowed to cry, then you automatically be being shown that you need to be the sole survivor without emotion, without emotional like pain. And now, here's another interesting part. So this is number 3. At the age of puberty, we want to go meet girls, right? And what happens is because girls are taught to protect themselves from us, which I get why. I mean, heck, at that age, men have a one-track mind, women have a one-track mind. Let's just leave it at that. All right. We all get it, right? If women weren't taught to safeguard what they've got, it would be a gong show, right? I get it. But at that age, you no longer have access to love from friends, people the same way as women do. And not only because you're now a man or you're in teenage years, you got to figure it out. Men are tougher on you. Your father may have already been tough on you your whole life. Girls, you have to earn love now as a man. You have to win it. It's not easily available. Yeah, you might have female friends and all of that. And, it's not really that dire. And yet it is. Because to get access to love, you have to earn it. Mm-hmm. The girl, rightfully so, says, no, impress me. And yet that leaves the man going, okay, where do I have access to love? Aside from my mother and maybe a couple of aunts and maybe my grandmother, the rest of the world, I have to earn love, and I have to earn love by getting respect. And I get respect because when I'm strong and I don't show weakness, because that's what the world needs me to see, needs me to show and demonstrate, needs to see from me. So now imagine being a man and the brain keeps on forming and if developing its patterns up until the late 20s in our lives. And this is happening up until the age of 16 and into our teens. Guess what patterns are setting into us? Mm-hmm. Don't tell me I have a problem. I'm perfect. Not that I'm perfect, but I'm not, listen. And so we spend our lives fighting our emotions. We're fighting our own mind. No wonder we're exhausted. No wonder we're wondering why we can't relate to people that are more emotionally centric, i.e. women. We have to learn formulas to impress people, i.e. women, because that's the only thing we've been allowed to have access to is our logical mind. And it's a very powerful logical mind. And we're very powerful at doing it. I mean, look at what men create in the world. Women create, men create. But let's honor that since we're talking about men. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So all of that, and now our partners, and later on in marriage too, especially since our patterns set in and the women get to a point where they're like, okay, I'm tired of whatever's been happening. and we're going, what do you want from me? And then the world now is telling me I've got problems with my emotions. Well, guess what signs I want to make, right? And so, and this is the challenge that men have. And if you're a man, like I said, consider it. And what it takes is for us to let go of trying to hold ourselves back emotionally. Now, here's the other challenge. Now we've built up so much anger and frustration. So now we're in our relationship. It's later on in the marriage, right? Either we've suppressed ourselves so much because we're suppressing, constantly suppressing. So either we've suppressed ourselves so much that now what women experience is the man is not present in the relationship, right? But all we've been taught is to make the woman happy. So let's do what you want, honey. And you're going, am I having this relationship with my mirror? Like, am I here by myself? Right? Do you get how this is coming together? It's a gong show, right?
Gosh, you're so right.
It's a gong show. And we're both men and women are doing the best we know how, but all these patterns have been ingrained in us. And so we're like, what do you want from me? I just want to make you happy like I've been taught I need to. Don't ask me about my emotions, because quite frankly, I've suppressed them so much. I don't want to, because the only thing I have access to now is anger and hurt. And I don't want to spew that in. This is why I bottle it up and I'm quiet and I'm, stoic. But then I blow up. Or just like, women have the converse of that is women just do their chores, take care of the family, and one day go, I'm had enough. Right? Right. And so for men, either we suppress or we're constantly angry, and we're angry within the relationship. And now, in different parts of the world, you might say, well, no, men have everything. They control everything. They get to tell their wives what to do, and the wives have to listen. Yes, I get that too. But in those parts of the world, men are also taught the same lessons around emotion. Because honestly, I had to go through my own connecting to my own emotions and figuring that out. Because honestly, I was the rugby player, workout engineer guy. I was happy and kind and good, and still am. But I didn't know I was suppressing everything inside of me until it all fell apart. And then I had no choice but to figure out how to work with my emotions. Right. And so I was blessed in that. At the time, I didn't think I was. I was blessed in that. I don't want anybody else to go through the same thing. So when you're saying, do men have challenges with emotions? It's tough to have that conversation just outright like this, unless the man has come to the realizations of like, holy crap, I got to fix something. Right. And, luckily nowadays we are at those points where this is happening much more. And yet there's so much more, it's still less than the general majority. So in the parts of the world, and even if you're an immigrant to the West and you're still living with the old ways of being, it might be even tougher. Or maybe the father may not be ready. The man in your life may not be ready to let go, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's something that your sons can take on and figure out as well, right? Because there's a lot of empowerment in understanding that and then turning that around. So think about what happens when a man, so I'll just kind of mention one or two more things, like, because you're constantly taught to win love. Another thing that happens for us, especially in societies where men are always trying to pick up women, which is everywhere really, but some societies openly allow that, right? Women are taught to sit back and decide whether or not they approve of this man. So as the guy, you become more hardened. At first you're shy, then it becomes a game of who cares? Just another number. I'll get a bunch of them. And then the woman becomes less of, I won't say less of a person, but just definitely becomes more of, a game. It's a pickup game. Let me see how many I can get. It just becomes this thing where it's just a matter of how much can I win, right? This is just so we understand that the things that are happening in there and why certain behaviors of men towards women in general. I want to generalize here because this isn't happening everywhere. And men are great, if you're a man, you're watching this, your heart is good. You just, you may already know this, or there might be something there here that kind of, maybe something to think about. Yeah. So I hope that answered your question. Was there anything else in there that you wanted me to address at all?
You address more than we ask for. It's
Okay.
a lot to think about. It's a lot to process. It's a lot to even digest. And
Mhm.
yes, as women, my expectations from my men is to be man up
Mhm.
and take care of it. Yeah, things happen. And I know I am guilty of even saying those things to
Mhm.
my husband, saying, yes, problem happened, but we got to find a solution. Man up, let's do this. And not realizing what it does to his subconscious, that alone man up, how much of a burden I just put on his shoulders with that.
You're right, actually, and you said some really good words there, and it's like he may not actually realize that, but yes, he feels like, okay, I got to figure it out. Now his stress level's gone up, and yet this is something that he's so accustomed to that he just accepts it as what is.
Yeah,
And
unfortunately.
this is the other piece of it, because here it is too, right? As a man, you're judged. You grow up being judged by others when you show weakness. And so, and in the playground, here's another piece. The guys around you, the men around you, or the boys around you, they're looking for your weakness. This is just how we grow up. Whether it's right or wrong, this is just the life of a man. With the men around you, the guys around you, aside from your friends and sometimes your friends, are looking for your weakness so they can exploit it in a game of who's the alpha, who's going to get the more girls, who's going to get the most respect, who's going to, respect is a big thing, who's going to get the most um, money and success. Because to us, when you're respected, you have success. When you have success, your family's happy, and so on and so forth. So emotion equals potentially lack of respect, because some guy is going to find a weakness to try to get in on you. We grow up with this way into our 20s and even into our 30s. And I mean, women you have your own competition to go with, but at least you're allowed to explore and understand how to master your emotional response.
Mhm.
From
Yes.
the very nuanced aspect, the complete emotional response, not the just anger, right? And there's also the understanding of masculine and feminine energies, which maybe we get into a different time, but and how they work, right? I don't know if we got into that in the last video, but if we didn't, we can always do another one. Masculine and feminine energies and how they work, and the fact that masculine and feminine is not the same as man and woman. We both have masculine and feminine. Anyway, so back to your point, Madhu. Yeah, how can we show weakness in front of our partner if our partner is going to judge us for it too? And as the partner, do you feel okay if you were to see your man show a moment of weakness just temporarily while he got it out of his system, and then he stood up and just got it done? Because really, that's what you do, right?
Yeah.
This is why, I mean, you might cry because you're angry, cry because you're sad, cry because whatever, you're worried, whatever. You do it for 5 seconds, and then let's keep on going.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just when men are like, what was that? I don't get that. As a man, as a man, I have experienced what it means to go from totally blocked up to understanding how the emotion aspect work, and feeling free to, I may not cry, or maybe I'll just feel sad for a moment, be like, all right, I'm done, let's move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that doesn't mean that I have to cry, but yet that cycle of just stop and process for a moment. We don't actually feel like we have that opening with our partners. This is part of where my marriage actually didn't work out, because I didn't feel like I could speak this way or speak my true hurt or internal whatever was going on with my partner, because I would be judged for it. And so I bottled it up, and I was never present in the relationship. And she's like, where's your fight? Where's your fire? And in my head, I'm thinking, if you had any idea how much fight I'm exerting right now to keep myself cool and to keep myself cool day to day, if you only had any idea, you would have the utmost respect for me. But you don't have an idea because I'm not telling you. And you can't have, how can you have respect for me for suppressing what you're hoping for me to be able to express, right? So it just becomes this thing. So I hope I'm giving a lot of sort of awareness, right? And with this awareness, maybe we can also talk about some possible solutions. But it's very important to know that we have the opportunity to express what we want. And maybe what you can say as a woman, as the partner, be like, okay, so we have this. So back to your example, Madhu. Okay, so we have this problem. How do you feel about it?
Mm.
And let him kind of be like, I don't know, whatever, right? And you talk about, okay, I'm worried. Okay, we can do this, right? What do you think we should do? Or, and then say man up after that. It's like, okay, you've expressed it. Okay, we're on the same page. Let's get going, right? Honestly, for the most part, it's just the truth of the majority of partnerships between man and a woman, or masculine and feminine representatives. You have learned and had the opportunity to learn how to work with your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to ask the questions that will help the man process through his.
Wow. This is good stuff. Very good stuff. No wonder there's a saying, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. That's how women and the men are totally different in the way we express our emotions, in the way we express our weaknesses. As we all know, women's empowerment nowadays is just getting more and more popular. And what do you think? What about men? And what do you think vulnerable men is all about, Mike?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Because, you know, as a man, I'm all for women stepping into feeling strong, happy, and powerful for themselves, right? And when I went through this, so the women's empowerment as it is come through today started really hitting its stride when I was in university. So I got to kind of grow up with receiving, being on the receiving end of that being more louder and louder, right? Um, so at first, as a man, you're like, you might say, some men are like, yeah, great, fantastic, and some men might say, well, okay, what is this, like, are you coming against men? Or, and we had that for that concern for a while, because the movement behind women's empowerment was very much fighting back, quote unquote, towards misogyny, towards men, and towards male dominance, if you will, right? And we still have that. So the challenge as a man receiving that is, yeah, sometimes you receive it from a good perspective, where it's like, yeah, it's just women just want equal treatment and want to be empowered and not carry their burdens, feeling unsupported. And then there's a lot of women coming at men going, men suck, this and that. And what do you think happens when you come at a man with, first of all, with this, okay, maybe this is a good opportunity to understand masculine and feminine. Masculine and feminine, both of us have masculine and feminine, right? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and yet both of us have masculine and feminine. Generally speaking, women are more feminine. Generally speaking, men are more masculine, right? The masculine energy is a very forward, outgoing energy. We just carry more of it, right? And so when something's coming at us, what do you think is going to happen for us automatically? We're going to push against it. Whereas women, generally, your approach might be, because you're more on the feminine side, to flow it through and redirect, right? You're not going to necessarily push it against it. Maybe you will, because depending on what you've been taught. And there's a lot of women in the professional, I digress a little bit, a lot of women in the professional world that have taken on those masculine tendencies, and yet they feel more comfortable when they're in their feminine, right? So what does that mean for the vulnerable man? Well, it leaves men, a lot of men, if you haven't already kind of embraced the whole being vulnerable thing, wondering like, why are you asking me to be vulnerable? Why? I mean, do you want me to be weak? Right? Do you want me to be more feminine? I'm not more feminine. This is who I am. Where that just leads to more of what I said previously, right? Suppression of our emotions, suppression of our, and actually suppresses our brain power. Because again, if we're fighting our own emotions, we're fighting our brain. Our subconscious mind is our processing center. This is where most of the subconscious, the powerful processing happens. So if we're suppressing our emotions, we're suppressing our most powerful part of our mind. We don't realize that. Now, the vulnerable man, the interesting part of it is when we finally let go, we actually allow our brain to flow more naturally. We allow our brain to flow and to process and figure things out more easily. And we actually being, this thing around being vulnerable, unfortunately, the word is very triggering to a man because of everything that we've talked about already. And it's important to use that word, though, not to trigger, but because for us to allow ourselves to access the parts of us that we've shut off because we're not allowed to show emotion, we have to shine the light into that, into ourselves. And when we shine the light into that, we have to feel the feelings that we're actually trying to push away. And when we feel them, we're going to express them. Somebody will see. And that is going to leave us feeling vulnerable because we're now being expressive of the emotions that are considered to be weaker. Vulnerability in that case, in how that goes, is exactly what we want, because we cannot clear, we cannot heal, we cannot release what we do not allow ourselves to shine the light on. And in our subconscious then are all of these compartments of hidden stuff. And the only way for us to feel lighter is to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, in the sense that we are now allowing ourselves to shine the light inside those compartments in our mind, to process, to express, to embrace emotion as well as logic, because it's not about embracing emotion but throwing away logic. We're not saying that. Mm-hmm. It's about, the logic is powerful, it needs to be there. The emotion needs to be allowed now too. And when we allow the emotion, it might take us a bit of time to figure out how to work with it, because at first it might be anger, right? But the vulnerable man thing is not about weakness. It's actually about releasing the tension. It's about easing the stress off of our shoulders. If we can just talk and say what we feel stressed about, we wouldn't be carrying so much of it. And if our partner then can't respect that or allow for that, maybe she or he just needs to have a moment and just realize what's going on and respect and appreciate what's happening. Or maybe now that we're being honest about what's going on for us, maybe this is our sign to see that we're not in a healthy relationship for us. Mm. And that is empowerment, by being vulnerable, by allowing vulnerability. Because yes, people might see us displaying weakness, and this is something that we've taught to never do. But when we embrace that, we see that even though somebody might see the weakness, we're still able to push them back if they're trying to do something about it. So really, it was just a worry that we had, not an actual fact that weakness displayed equals somebody taking things from us, right? Because that's another topic. So the whole vulnerable man thing is, if whoever's listening to this is really looking at it from a perspective of, it's not about a man becoming a woman. Unfortunately, a lot of people are teaching it that way. A lot of people are just like, just show more empathy, show more, be soft, get in touch with your feelings and your hurt. And the answer is yes, but you don't have to do it like a woman. Mm. You can do it like a man and still be a man. I can be in front of both of you and in front of the world and shed a tear if I had something to shed a tear about, talk about my sadness, and then I'm still saying it as a man. My voice doesn't drop down in 10 octaves. My voice doesn't go up 10 octaves. I don't all of a sudden lose my Adam's apple. I don't start moving my hands in ways that aren't normally how I move my hands. I am still a man. And this is in the world where people are expecting men to be more like women. Understanding the vulnerability, again, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Understanding that our emotions are still sadness, shyness, fear, all of that's behind all the anger. But we're allowed to say it as a man. Mm-hmm. Right? So the vulnerable man, as a man, if you're listening to this, it's about releasing your stress. Just let it go. It's about no longer carrying the burden, man. And the only way to do that is to actually talk about what you're actually stressed out about. Not I'm just stressed. It's I'm stressed that I may not be doing the right things, or that this job is stressing me out, my boss is making me angry, and I'm not happy in what I'm doing, but I need to be the one to provide. And so I need to show a strong face. And I don't know how much longer I can show the strong face because I just need an opportunity to just chill out and let go. And this is where we go chill out with our buddies, because we don't have to talk about emotions. We can just pretend like there's no problem. So that's the interesting part there too.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's an interesting sort of dynamic. But if I was to say again, vulnerability is about getting the stress off your shoulders. It's not about being weak. It's about just saying what you need to say to let go, and so you're not carrying the burden. Okay.
Ah, that's deep. That's deep, Mike. Thank you so much. I mean, it's it is ingrained in us. It's the nature and the nurture that has taught us forever and ever
Mm-hmm.
that vulnerability, crying, expressing emotion, it's a women thing. Men don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's not alone men's responsibility. So I would like you to touch on that. I know you already mentioned those points, but I would like to elaborate more on that part. That what is your advice for women who are with men and who are raising boys? What is your advice for them so that we can be those supporting pillars that allow them to be the men that they need to be, or they should be,
Yes.
according, not just according to world's perspective, man up and all that type of crap, but yeah, what is your advice for women then?
You know what? We'll start with boys, with the boys in your lives.
Mhm.
Okay, whether it's your boys directly or your nephews and whatever, what have you. Um, the interesting part is I mentioned I had a talk with my mother about this. Telling her where I had challenges in life, and she said, "I never stopped you from crying." I said, "I know, Mom, you may not have, but everybody else that I was exposed to in my world told me to man up and don't show emotion."
Mhm.
And for you as a caretaker, or as a woman work with boys in your life, just keep on encouraging and asking them to explore their emotions, not in a way where they may not even know what you're talking about. If you just say, "Hey, what are your emotions telling you?" They'd be like, right. It's more of, because there is an aspect of the language that boys and girls have around things, and girls that develop faster with language and so on and so forth. That's also the nature of things, and that's okay. But really walking the boy through, so you're angry, what's making you angry? And they might say, "I don't know," but feel free to take them through the steps of exploring that, because you know how. Feel free to take the steps through the steps of exploring that, so they can actually, once you do that for a while, they'll actually be able to access that. And then you've given them the tools they needed to access that, even though the rest of the world tells them they can't.
Mhm.
Right. So, and avoid saying man up. But you can say, for instance, some boys might be more sensitive at a certain time in their life, and you might say, "Hey, it's okay to cry, but you can also, while you're crying, you can do what you need to do." Right. So it's not like man up. It's like, "Okay, you're crying, I get it, but you can still do what you need to do. So let's do it together. Maybe keep on crying. Here, let's do this." Right. And so it allows him to continue processing and stay open,
Mhm.
while he can see that he learns actively through that, because boys need active something. He learns actively through that how to process emotion. And you can also, if he needs to get something out of his system, just kind of tell him, "Okay, shake it off. What do you want to do?" And he might just do that and feel like, "Oh, I feel so much better." And that just gives him another tool to let go of emotion. Okay. All right. So that's for boys. And if something comes up, there's almost something else that wants to be said here. You know what? The world may or may not teach them how to shut down. And so just keep on being the one that encourages him or them to keep on understanding how to explore into their emotions and identify what's underneath. Okay. And you might want to then take a course or two on How do you unpack emotion?
Mm.
That might be something where it'll arm you with what you need to help your sons or nephews or boys unpack emotion. Okay. Now, for the men in your lives, the toughest thing would be, it's exactly what's happening for the most part, is telling them what they're doing wrong. Right. And I get it. You've tried and you've been patient, and maybe you haven't said anything, hoping he'll see. That will never work. He will not see because he thinks everything's fine. Okay. And so when you say it, really try saying it from a perspective of why you need him to do what you need him to do, or why you need him to express something, or maybe observe what's happening in him. I notice you've been stressed. Are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then say, there's the question of, would you like to talk about it? And if he says no, 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 you can also after a while say, look, I need us to talk about it. I would really appreciate if we could talk about it. And I'm okay with you being frustrated. I'm okay with you expressing anger. I'm okay with you maybe even like feeling that you want to say some things that you might feel weak about, or you might feel that it's not manly to say. I'm okay with that. You almost want to like preface that and say like, I'm okay if you do this, 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 and this. Go ahead and do it. Because that will be him saying, okay, maybe I'll give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it really is, it's going to be a bit of kind of figuring out what works for him, knowing that you're likely more equipped to unpack the hurt and all the stuff underneath. And the way, because of the masculine energy, the way he meets emotion, it's the masculine energy is outgoing, meet things head on, think like shields clashing. That's how he deals with emotion. And so he needs the opportunity to let the shield relax.
Mm.
Otherwise, hold on a second. Nobody's watching. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, everything I talk about, I've experienced and I've helped people through. And it really is that much. That's why for women, you feel anger, you might cry, but it's over. For a man, we feel anger and it's, thou shall not pass. Well, how are you supposed to process something if thou shall not pass? Right. and so there is that. It's just the nature of that and how we've been taught. Right. So for the boys, for the men, is there anything else that needs to be said? No, I think we've covered what needs to be said in terms of tips. And if you're a partner, then if you're a man and watching this and you want to explore this more, feel free to reach out to me through these lovely ladies, right? And if you're a woman who's got a partner that might be open to this, to maybe exploring and want to speak with a man as well, again, feel free to reach out through Circle Healing Connection, because honestly, that's the first step, is just to explore it, just see what it's all about, and no strings attached, no expectations. Just kind of throw out a couple of questions and see what goes, and whether or not you feel it's good for you.
Wow, this is great stuff, Mike. Thank you so much. Like what we can learn from just this short interview is someone have to pay $100 or a couple $100 toward parenting counseling or marriage counseling. And you are just giving out this tips and advice for free. So for the viewers, if you want to know more about how Mike can guide you toward your deep healing, please go to circlehc.org and book a free session with Mike. Thank you all for watching. Bye for now.
Bye.